So there was a question asked to me recently about like how what's going on has affected my faith, or how has my faith been affected by this. And when that question was asked, it made me think of this passage of this in this book that I'm reading. So I'm reading this book about the prisoners in Vietnam, like people who were in the army who got in trouble while they were in Vietnam because they were just a bunch of young kids who either got drafted or didn't know what they were getting into when they signed up, and they're in this jungle and it's hot and there's drugs all around. There's just chaos, right? And they're killing people that they don't really know much about, and they're hating people that they don't know much about, and then they get in trouble for one way or another. Now they're in this prison together. And one of the passages in this book, uh, one of the guards was social workers. Sorry, one of the social workers were talking, and he said, um, the MPs, the military police, saw the inmates as criminals. Social workers saw them as people who came from bad families. Educational specialists saw them as people who didn't have an education and therefore needed educational opportunities. Psychologists saw them as people who had personality disorders that they needed to work through. Lawyers saw them as people worked over by the military criminal justice system. The commander saw these guys as degenerates and an embarrassment to the army. All these different people saw these folks from a different light. And social workers didn't talk to education people didn't talk to lawyers, and so on and so forth. And MPs, military police, wanted to incarcerate and punish them. There was no communication between the specialties. And for me, as a Christian, as a Black man, I kind of look at it as and as a poet, I make these connections on different things, like this book to what's going on now. Is that people see Black folks in a whole bunch of different filters. It's based off of what they've seen on TV or movies, what their parents or people around them have told them about Black people. Even in Vietnam, when they were fighting the war, some of the white soldiers were telling some of the Asian women that don't mess with the Black guys because they actually have tails, and they believed them. You know, so it's also, if you've hung around with Black people before, that it strongly influences your bias. So I see it when it comes to my faith. I just see the people who really hate us as a bunch of people who have been just taught wrong, who are unfortunate in the position that they're in because they've just been taught to hate, and that's not what Jesus is about. So it sounds really hippie of me. I don't know how this is gonna come across, but I really, it makes me want to pray for them. It makes me mad that this is happening. And in the moment, to be completely honest, in the moment, I'm not thinking, oh, I need to pray for this dude. I'm pretty mad. And then I take a second back, I take a step back, and I look at the bigger picture, because a lot of people, they say these people should be thrown in jail, you know? And then, but for me, I work in a prison. So I know that jail is not the end. They're still living their life. And then there's all these problems in prison, because you have people who are angry going to prison, dealing with other angry people, or even worse, dealing with people who aren't angry. And you have this guy who's the aggressor who's lost everything. And now he sees someone that looks like the person that has put him away. And the ultimate goal for Jesus and for us is to try to change hearts and change minds. you know of course, if they do criminal activity, they have to go away, like, for sure. But you know more so than anything, I think change is going to come when there's changes of hearts. And that's part of the reason why these protests is protesting, the peaceful protesting, it's been changing hearts, and it's been making people more aware. So I'm glad that it's happening. um uh but I really think we need to pray for the hearts and in the minds of the people who see us as less than, you know If they do wrong, they have to go to jail. We have to have some kind of equality, but ultimately it's our duty as Christians to really help them see another way, and don't think that just because they're in jail, that's the end of the problem. Like, hooray, we're done. Because a lot of times they're going to get out and they're going to be just as mad because you think this is like the equality is not here on the outside. On the inside, it is highly segregated. So they're definitely not going to be around anybody other than their race. Like, that's the unwritten rule of the California penal system. You're going with your own race. Whatever you look like, you're going with your race, and whatever they're feeding them is just going to feed them. You may be together in programming or classes, but you're gonna go in with the people that look just like you. So your heart, it's rare that your heart's gonna start to get changed just because you went into prison. You're just gonna think like, man, I messed up, maybe, but and then these people are gonna get out, and so it doesn't end with just prison. We can't just lock them away and think that the problem's done. That's what they tried to do to us. That's what they try to do to Black people. They try to lock us up and think like the problem that was created from slavery is going to go away, and that's not how the world works. Because as you could see now, the problem uh, of what's going on, it stems all the way back from the decision to take people from their homeland and bring them here under the slave condition. So uh, it's our job as Christians. It doesn't shake my faith. It doesn't shake my faith. It's our job as Christians to pray for the hearts and minds that people, meet the person that's gonna get them to see things a little bit differently. That's the goal. That's the goal in my mind. Otherwise, things aren't going to change. If we think we could beat it out of them, the hate out of them, if we think we can punish the hate out of them, uh, honestly, it feels like sometimes they're just going to be more low key and more sinister about their about how they want to try to oppress uh, our ethnicity, our race, and that's even more scary to me when people aren't overt, and they're the gatekeepers. Because right now, Black folks are not the gatekeepers. We're the entertainers, we're the athletes, but we are not far from being the gatekeepers. So pray for the people on the other side of the line that they get a chance to talk to one of us, that they get a chance to just experience our joy and our love and our peace and our humor and our humanity. And I think that's the thing that's going to change minds. Going back to this Vietnam thing, Vietnam was the first war where Black soldiers and white soldiers were integrated. First war. A lot of these kids had never been around the opposite race. They've seen them from afar or whatever, and now you're fighting together. You're in this fight together, and because they saw who we really were on both sides, hearts and minds started changing. There was a lot of racial issues still there, but that was one moment where hearts and minds were changing because they actually spent time together. Even when the country is going through this huge civil debate, equal rights debate, and people were marching. This is all in the 60s, late 60s. In Vietnam, these men had to fight together. So I think we all want this country not to burn. I think we all want this country to find a way to be in a position to where everybody feels like they're equal to each other as far as who you are as a human. There's still going to be classism. you know that's a whole other issue. It's part of this issue, but it's still a whole other issue. But really, we need to pray for each other and introduce each other, as many people as you can, to Jesus, or just to who you are, and let them see the light that's inside of you. And hopefully that'll change hearts and minds, especially if you're not afraid to talk about the hard things.